Can I get an egg McMuffin and a large coffee, please?
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Puser and I'm very excited to be presenting today. I'm just going to do a very quick intro and I just have a couple words to say about the Simio Think Conference. So very briefly about me. I'm originally from France. I grew up in Paris and then I moved to the US more than 10 years ago and I went to school in Chicago at IIT. So in terms of background, I have a master's degree in industrial engineering. And then I started working, I was an intern at United Airlines, and I was an industrial engineer there in their CIEO department, so continuous improvement and enterprise optimization. And during my time there, that was the first time I was exposed to Simio. And then we leveraged the tool to understand how many kiosks were needed to shift from a counter check-in to more like a kiosk self-checking. So very interesting, but this is where everything started, was to use Simio to truly understand the capacity of that number of kiosks, knowing that we have different needs, and then also some passenger expectations. So for example, like numbers of orders in queue at maximum or like a maximum wait time. So using all that, that's how we drove some decision. Then I work for HDR as a simulation specialist, and my role there was to connect the dots between design and operation using simulation. So we were using simulation to understand like how many exam rooms were needed and how can we impact the wait time, looking at the room assignment per provider and looking also at the different processes to make sure we can optimize the room while maintaining like a satisfying patient experience. Moving on, I now work for McDonald's, part of their global ops department. And in a very similar way, I'm still using simulation to provide some insights from an operation perspective. So using basically Simio to better understand systems that do not exist, better anticipate the bottlenecks, or maybe doing some testing before we push a solution. So as you can hear, really the common denominator of all the different positions I had in my life was Simio. So I have been using Simio for many, many years. And it's quite fascinating because I feel the tool also has evolved with the needs of the industries. So it's very refreshing to work with such a great company that really hear the needs of their users to make sure the tool is always like fitting and meeting our needs. So as a little segue here, I just want to say a couple of words about the conference that we are all attending today. I have been presenting a couple times at Simio Sync, and really I had to like scroll all the way up through my LinkedIn page to find when I put that post. So that was 7 years ago, and that's when we had the user group, the Simio conference in person, and I presented there. So 2016, 2018, 2019, that's when I presented, and then 2026. Very excited. Also, I just want to say there's an amazing audience and very talented Simio users that I have met during those conferences. It's very fascinating to see how other people leverage the tool, use the tool, but also like the challenges they are facing, and then the evolving needs that they have. So again, I have enjoyed all the conferences I've attended with Simio, and I'm really amazed every time I see how simulation is being used in different companies. On a very side note too, this is a very effective networking. So I really hope you do leverage as much as you can being part of this community. For the fun fact, when I went to the Simio user group a couple of years ago, I met Jared Tommy there before he worked at McDonald's, before I worked at McDonald's. And then he took a job at McDonald's. And I think a year after, they were looking to hire. And then because we met at Simio, he knew I was a Simio user and we were in contact. And I was like, well, I'm interested by this position. Let's talk. So again, it's really like it's an amazing community. It's a very effective networking because we all have that skills of like knowing how to use this tool. So I really hope you leverage and really embrace as much as you can this community that really like brings a lot. So without further ado, let's get into the presentation. Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Olivia Puser. I'm very excited to be presenting about testing at McDonald's leveraging simulation. More specifically, we've created a solution that uses Simio that can help us reinvent how we are leading and performing operational testing at McDonald's. So today, we will go through this agenda that you see on the screen. First, I will talk about our Innovation Center, what it is and what's happening there. And then we are going to talk about the existing operations, how we are performing and leading testing today, but also some of the improvement that we have. There's definitely some limiting factors in the way we're doing testing, and that's the reason why and what's lead to the solution McTaps. You will know later in these presentations why it's called McTaps. So as I said, first, let's go through our innovation center at McDonald's. It is called Speedee Labs. So Speedee Labs, it's a brand new space, beautiful space that is located at MHQ in our headquarters, so McDonald's headquarters, located in the West Loop area in Chicago. It's on 2 different floors and it's also nicely integrated with Hamburger University, that is our corporate university. So the picture that you see on the bottom, this is really the space where we are doing some testing. So really we can recreate restaurants of the entire world. We can look at some different layouts and this is where we perform the testing. Either we can test operational changes or maybe the impact of adding one menu item, or maybe be more innovative and then try to test brand new ways of serving our customers. So as I said, I'm going to go through the way we are doing operations today. So today, when we perform operational testing, as I said, we recreate restaurant mock-up. So let's say we have a market coming into our space, and let's say this is the French market, for example, then we are going to recreate the layout of the French market. So the restaurant will represent a very specific layout. And as you can see, we do have real crew members working in that testing restaurant. What you see on the right, this is real customers. So we pay those people to be the customers during this test, and they are navigating through the space and they are placing orders. So as you see on the picture here, the gentleman with the blue shirt is a customer and he's placing an order with the crew member that is wearing that orange jacket. So let's go into more details about how things are done today. Today, our operational testing is based on a scanning system. Let me give you some more information about this. On the left, let's assume that person is in a car, and this is basically a customer waiting for their order at the drive-through window. The yellow box in front of that lady is a scanner. And at the end, when she receives her order, she's supposed to scan her ticket with that scanner. Very similar example on the right. We have a gentleman that is going through the drive-thru and is about to place an order. And same here. There is a scanning system just before proceeding to different steps throughout the drive-thru journey. So in different words, all those customers, they do have to scan tickets throughout all the different steps of their customer journey. When they place an order, when they are done ordering, when they receive the food, when they pay, etc., etc. So just to give you a little bit more details here, if we have a drive-thru order, this is the 5 different scanning a customer has to do. They have to scan when they arrive. They have to scan when they get greeted by a crew member. They have to scan when they are done placing their order. And you can see how that's going. They have to scan when they are done paying, and they also have to scan when they receive their order. This is just one example. This is the drive-thru customer journey. But we have different sequence for scanning depending on every single ordering channel. As an example, if we have a kiosk order, the scanning is going to be different. They're going to be scanning at different places and at different time. I'm sure you can see how things can get a little bit confusing when people have to remember where and when they have to scan. So let's move on a little bit now that you have a better understanding of how things are done today. Maybe I can explain to you a little bit more what are limitations and then why we do have a need for improvement. So, as I said, our customers, they have to scan multiple times. They have to remember where and when to scan depending on if there's a draft orders, if there's a front counter order, if there's a delivery order, etc. So we don't have optimal data quality due to this mis-scanning. And I don't know if you try to scan something at some point in your life, but sometimes you don't know if you really scan it. You don't have an indicator like, did the scanning went through? Maybe yes, maybe not. So that brings a little bit some of that lower a little bit the data quality, just not knowing like, did I proper scan the ticket? There is definitely some human errors. So maybe they forget to scan, maybe they thought they scanned but they did not. That things happen. As I said, as I was explaining, there are many different scanning sequences depending on the ordering type. So it can be very confusing for our customers that come into our space. They act as customers and then they have to remember where to scan. That confusion is not easy, and that also lowers the data quality. I think I'm repeating myself a little bit, but you see the gesture here. We also have the double scanning issue. So I thought I scanned, but I'm not sure I'm going to scan again. And in all that, at the end, it's kind of like impacting our data as well. So another limiting factor that we have is the space. So this is located in Chicago, and space is limited around here. It's a beautiful space, but when we are testing very, very high volume, we literally need to hire a lot of customers then so we can really replicate the operations when we have a large number of customers coming to our restaurants. And then the space starts to be very limited. It's packed, it's crowded, people are trying to like walk around everyone, and then orders are coming out through the kitchen. So it is not the best, it is not optimal. We are also trying to recruit people, some people in the building that maybe they can stop by and participate of the test. So it is definitely a lot of efforts on our end when we run very high volume. And that's why we were thinking maybe we need some improvement there as well. Of course, because we need to hire people, there is a price component with this. So the very last thing I would mention here, I've talked about the scanning issue, I talked about the pricing aspect. Something that is very important is that the data that we are tracking is really driving decision making at McDonald's. So we have to make sure that the data quality is there, and we want to have the best data possible. And also, as we're trying to answer more and more complex questions, the need for more data granularity is higher and higher. So at some point with the scanning system that we have, it's a very robust system. It allowed us to really do a lot of testing in a very efficient and granular way. But we kind of need to go to the next step, bring more granularity, being able to improve the data quality, and working within the space that we have. So for all those reasons, we needed to investigate a solution. Let's talk about the solutions now. As I said, we will know today in this presentation what McTaps stands for, and here it is. It stands for Time and Process Sync. I will explain to you by the end of those couple slides. You will understand why we came up with that name. So McTaps is an ecosystem that allows communication between a Simio model and then a user-friendly application. The whole idea here is that Simio will send information to the database. As an example, a car just arrived to the ordering booth, and will send that timestamps into the database. The database then will set that information to the app and send a little trigger that says, a car just arrived at the window. You should take action. So now the crew that is holding the tablet will know, oh, a car just arrived. I'm being prompted to do something on the app, and then they can go with the process. So if I were to rephrase a little bit what I just said, the whole idea of McTaps is to have an ecosystem where Simio and this app that is owned by a crew member can communicate together through a database, sending timestamps, indicating when auctions are being started, so then each entities can really understand how things are working on the restaurant floor, but also sending back information into Simio and vice versa. That's the whole idea of McTaps. We're going to go into even more detail, so bear with me here if you feel that's still not very clear. So this is our Simio model, and I really wanted to show this model because we all have that model that is very complex, that has links and paths everywhere, and then labels and nodes and arrows. So you are not alone. I'm sure we all have been there. So I'm going to give you like a more clean version of this. So this is our clean version of the model. Let me help you orient yourself throughout this image. So this is a bird view of a given restaurant. The two yellow boxes here, that's the present window, and that's the fast forward window. So sometimes if you go to the drive-thru and the crew might tell you, go up to the next window, we are still working on your order, as an example. On the very top left of the image, those two white shapes, this is the ordering booth. This is where the customer will place an order. And then you can see the lobby in the middle of this image. We have a front counter, and on the left side, this is where we have the kitchen. So we have a very complex model that is reflecting all different ordering types. So we can have front counter ordering, delivery, kiosk, and drive-through that can come through that model. So I'm going to let this video play a little bit. I will call your attention to this car, and I'm just going to pause just to see where that car is. I'm not sure if it's a little bit choppy. The car is right here on the top. So as you can see, this car is driving through the drive-thru and just stopped at the ordering booth. Again, I'm looking at the top shape here. One turned green because the car just arrived. Now, Simio will send information into the database. How? There is a step in Simio where we can connect that step into the database through the API, indicating the proper information into Simio, any indication on the database, the user ID or any password needed to access that database is also integrated into Simio. So Simio can write information without any issues into the database. So again, now Simio can tell the database a car just arrived at the ordering booth. Now let's look at together what a crew person will see on the floor in the restaurant. Now we have a stationary person that is at the speaker 1, so the ordering booth. There is a stationary person that is holding the computer. It can look on the computer, a car just arrived, and so this person get prompted with this message here, greeting started, and they will have to push that button when they start greeting the customer. And then when they are done taking the order, so for example, they can read the order details on the right. I want a large double chicken barbecue, value meal, etc., etc. And when they are done placing the order, they will push the button here that says order taking completed. Again, a very similar way. Now the app is sending back that information into the database. We are done ordering. So maybe the crew person was doing something else. They had to run do some burgers, many things to do in a restaurant, go back to the customers, finish ordering. And now the person that is literally like holding the tablet can say, I'm done ordering. And then we can proceed into the next steps. So I'm trying to make things clear a little bit. I'm just going to repeat myself one more time. We are moving from customer moving around the restaurants to stationary roles. Now one person would stay at the ordering booth and will just follow the information that are being prompted into the app. How do they know a car just arrived? Is because Simio told the app through the database that a car just arrived. Long story short, we are connecting the dots between Simio, that is looking at the drive-through dynamics and making sure like the queue dynamics through the drive-through, and prompting information to the crew that are in person in the restaurant floor doing the testing. I hope I'm being clear. I'm going to move on to the next little screenshot that we have. So as I said, the person is supposed to push that order taking completed once the order is taken. And so now that the database know, okay, order is complete, Simio, you can release that car and get that car moving to the next spot, which is the pay window. Then we can look at it on Simio. So now, as you can see here, I'm just going to pause. The car just stopped at the pay window. Again, that information was prompted from the database that's sending information into Simio. They are done taking the order. That car can move up to the next step. And now Simio released the car from the ordering booth into the pay window. Very similar process here. Now we don't have customers walking around, we have stationary people. That one person that is stationed at the payment window, same, is looking at an app and then have some prompt. They know a car just arrived because they can see exactly what we see on the screen. Whenever they are done doing the payment with the crew member on the floor, they can press the button payment completed. So basically now, everywhere a customer or a car has to stop, someone will be owning a computer, holding a computer with the app, and then push this button and follow the instructions and the action they are supposed to take, looking at the app. Simio takes care of the queuing dynamics through the drive-through and within the restaurants to prompt those actions to the crew that are on the floor. So how this solution is addressing our existing issues. I'm going to be repeating myself a little bit, so please bear with me here. I'm just trying to be very clear in all my explanations. So first, as I said, the data quality wasn't optimal because maybe sometimes they were missing scanning and error happens. It's fine. We know things happen. Using McTaps, we can really have greater data accuracy. We can use Simio to be even more granular. So as an example, with Simio, we know when the car arrived at the cash booth, when they actually started payment, when they stopped payment, how long they waited between the pay window until the present window. So it just gives us way more opportunities to look at many different data through a different granularity. So as an example now, we can even look at mobile orders, how long they've been waiting before payment. It really gives us the possibility to look at those data in greater level of detail than we used to before. So that's one of the great advantages. The results are immediate. Everything is written into the database, as I told you, and then with the query, we can manipulate those data, get duration out of those timestamps, and then being able to look at the results. There was just one test, maybe let's say like a 30-minute test. It's done, and in few clicks now, we can look at all those different metrics, the wait time, how many cars were served, how many cars maybe had to go to the pull forward window, and those mobile orders, how long they've been waiting before being graded. So again, it's very quick now that we can get those results and then discuss the test with the different actors on the floor to have data-driven discussion. There is definitely richer insights, as I said, through new KPIs and new views. It's also very informative for people to look at the bird view of the restaurants to really understand how crowded things are. So it really gives like another insight to the different actors that are present when we do testing here. Earlier, I was mentioning how the space is limited here. So being able now to run very high volume, but having like virtual people coming, it really helped with the space, the physical space here. So we have less crowded space, and it's way easier to run higher volume because we don't have to recruit people through the building, etc. So higher volume now, it's not a problem anymore. As I said, there is a price component. Before, we have to pay customers to be those customers that are navigating through the space. And then now it removed that price component into the price of operational testing here. So for all those reasons, that solution really help us elevate the way we're doing testing, but also the complexity of the questions we can answer. So there are definitely learnings through this journey. It has been a journey. It was not an easy solution, but we worked through with very amazing and talented people. So we partnered with Simio Consulting to help us develop the solution. So I really want to share those key learnings because I feel this can be applied to any of your projects. And truly, I think if I knew that before, I would have considered like a longer timeline into this project, because literally like you can double your timeline once you know the roadblocks you can have to implement such a solution. First, the complexity of the Speedee Labs IT system. So Speedee Labs, it's an innovation center without MHQ, and it has its own system. When I say its own system, it's its own server, database, network. So there is many policies and restrictions around who can use the server, who can write data into the database, who can get connected into the server that is specific to the innovation center. So just that piece was a challenge, to have the right permissions to be able to write those data and making sure Simio could reach those information as well from the database. So that's definitely a struggle itself. Then the test today, there are other tools are being used so we can run the test. So Simio and McTaps in general has to be integrated within those tools. So we had to make sure that the tool that is generating orders, for example, so how do we know it's like a Big Mac menu with medium fries and a large Coke, for example? Like we have a tool that generate those orders, and Simio has to grab that information so then they can also being displayed into the app. So all those different elements have to grab information from different places. Just that step here has been, again, a challenge. How can we tweak existing tools so Simio, the database, the app, can reach the information that we need? So maybe something we have not anticipated on our end was how intense, how difficult the process would be just to achieve that, just to integrate McTaps within a bigger ecosystem that is the Innovation Center. Something that I didn't know, and that was like a very aha moment for us. We have 18 different computers where the app is running. So again, that those computers can be placed throughout strategic places in the restaurant. So I gave you the example of the ordering booth. All those computers, they are not running on the same time. What I mean by that, one computer can indicate 10 a.m. 22 seconds, 10 a.m. 1 minute 22 seconds, and maybe another computer will show 10 a.m. 1 minute 18 seconds. So now when you write information into the database, we are just writing timestamps that come from a different reference point. And that was an issue. So basically now we had to set and synchronize all the times of all those computers to synchronize with the database timestamp. And just that as well was not an easy exercise. We had to find workarounds to the McDonald's policy that does not allow us to own the timestamps of those 18 computers. So again, it's hard because it's not something we can really anticipate. We didn't know we would be facing that issue. But just what I described was a 2 months delay into our process. And then when we talk about such an intense ecosystem that and quite complex, we have to work with different teams. Tech team, the team from IT, the ops team, maybe the testing managers who maybe have insights to share in terms of which metrics they want to see, and then how do we set up those metrics in the database so that everything can be expedited, automated. We really had to work with so many different teams that also have their own workload. So it was very interesting to kind of see how everybody's kind of going through this process of creating a brand new tool, given that we all have different priorities. So there is definitely like a team involvement that we have to also navigate. The solution itself, so now I'm looking at the number 2, the solution involvement, we have to make sure that Simio always reflects the latest process. So as an example, like if we have a restaurant that do not have a fast forward window, then we have to make sure that Simio will not route cars to that fast forward window. So we have to make sure that every time we run Simio, every time we work with the market, we understand what the simulation should reflect to make sure all those orders are being routed to the right place. Again, as another example, maybe you've heard about McCafe. Some McCafe are integrated within their front counter area. Some McCafe are a separate entity and they are not integrated within the front counter. We've seen all many different layouts and different way of operating. So again, it's very important to always have someone that knows Simio that can make those changes into the model to make sure that we can always reflect the latest and greatest that need to be tested. The last one here is kind of related to what I just talked about. There are other tools that are feeding information into Simio. So it's all about timestamps when an order is being injected into the kitchen, etc., etc. So all those tools that are manipulating timestamps, they have to be very consistent into the formatting, because Simio cannot understand, oh, there was just a time, there was a date and time. Like, it has to be consistent, a date and time. So again, if I say that, it's because we've been in situations where we go from date and time to just a time, and now Simio doesn't know what to do. So again, we're kind of really testing the solution every time because this is such a complex system that there's many things we cannot anticipate. So this is really like an ongoing solution. We always have to make changes and enhancement to make sure that it's properly working. Finally, there is like a change management piece. People have been using the scanning system for a very long time. So they are used to it. There's a trust into the system. So there, we really had to navigate explaining to the crew how things work, how things are going to be different. What did they see before that they're not going to see anymore, but maybe what are the new things they will see that they could not see before. So there's like a change component that is also very important. We work with a lot of different people, either the different markets, we have franchises coming here as well, and the crew members. So it's really navigating also from the human component, the change management that has been absolutely fascinating, and everybody has been very excited with the new tool. Thank you very much for your attention, for being interested into this presentation. Um, I'm the only one presenting today, but I have an army of people that helped me through developing the tool, but also developing this presentation. So I think they really deserve a shout out. Ryan from Simio Consulting has been absolutely essential. He's been an instrumental element in developing the tool, and I think he really deserves a big shout out. Um, Jared Tommy is also a Simio user at McDonald's, and he's the bright brain behind the very sophisticated Simio model that we have and that you have seen in those slides before. Also, Bill Zhao has been extremely helpful going through all the slides with me, making them very appealing, but also helping through the content and the storytelling. So again, if you enjoyed this presentation, keep in mind that there's a bunch of people that help us through the finish line and making sure we have a well-working tool, but also a very nice presentation to all of you. Thank you so much again, and it's time for questions.
Well, thanks for the great presentation. I love hearing about the unique solution, and obviously appreciate the shout out. And great to be a part of this project. I'll go ahead and get started with the first question we have from the audience here. How did you decide to use Simio for this particular solution?
Yeah. So we've been using Simio quite a lot at McDonald's already before we even develop that tool. So it was really just a continuity of leveraging Simio. We did have a very detailed Simio model that we use a lot to answer some of the operational questions. So it was almost like a no-brainer that Simio will be kind of like part of the solution here. Also, we wanted to make sure that we could have the continuity of developing the solution moving forward. The process that we are modeling, but also testing on the floor, always changes. There's always some nuances, and we want to make sure that also, like as we have Simio users at McDonald's, that we can also like own the tool and making sure that we have someone that is ready to just jump in and maybe add a metric that we want to see, or maybe like some operational changes. So again, Simio is already part of our like ecosystem of different tools that we have. So again, it was almost a no-brainer that we will use Simio.
That's great. Yeah, so it was awesome to be able to use an existing model for just a different application and kind of moving over. So
exactly.
That's great. All right, let me take the next question. So the model does look very detailed, as you mentioned in the presentation. It looks like it has a lot of the detailed operations within the restaurant. I think you mentioned Jared did the development, but do you know about how long he spent on that in total?
Yeah, it's a good question. I want to say it's a good 9 months to a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to mention like it's maybe that model has run in a couple months, but we are always making changes. So I want to say like it's a never done model type of thing. So just to bring you a little bit more details, bring some insights here. We see the orders navigating through and like people are coming in and out, but there's also like in the model that we have, there's also the entire routing, for example, of the order. So there's many things that is totally invisible to us that is still running on the back. For example, like what if we want to change the writing to make it a bit more optimal, or maybe now we want to see the way we can make new drinks. Like it's an ongoing process that is always changing. So maybe from store to like a running model, I want to say like a 6 to 9 months, and then we have been making changes all the time. I hope I'm
Yeah,
answering the question.
definitely. Yeah. And I think those changes afterwards are kind of quick, right? You're like make enhancements to that core model to answer a specific question after you have to kind of like the baseline set is the way to think about
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. I
Okay.
want to say like most of the time, 85 to 90% of the model is done.
Hmm.
It just depends on the question we need to answer, but it's definitely like it's a great way to get started and then just make some, I don't want to say small tweaks because there is sometimes it's a little bit bigger, but definitely like we have a good starting point.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's great. We can go to the next question here. Okay, yeah, this is good. So how does I'll kind of like broaden this out a little bit. Like, how does the model account for different order types, that you have in the restaurant today?
Yeah. So I just want to make sure I answer the question correctly. So let
Hmm.
me clarify here. Are we talking about the tool like McTaps and how we handle online ordering? Or are we just talking about like the Simio tool that we have and that we use separately from the testing? Because it's almost two different answers.
That's a good clarifying question. I would almost ask both. I think we were probably more specifically talking about the solution within the lab,
Yeah.
and how maybe those orders are um, injected, into the system, or even how they're fed into Simio for that particular solution.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect. So I'll focus on the McTaps and like when we do testing on the floor. So um, we have a system that inject orders and print out tickets that are literally like assuming when a customer arrives. And that system is able to release or print those tickets at the very same time for every test. So we all know when we do testing, we want to change one thing. Like we want to make sure we can change only one thing so we truly understand the impact of that one change. So we want to make sure that those orders are either released, the ticket is being printed or injected into the kitchen at the very same time. How we do this, we do have a system at McDonald's that just do that injection. So when we talk about online ordering, it's exactly like any other orders. There's a very specific time. The order details is always the same. So let's say at 10 a.m., I place an online order, then the order items is always going to be the same every time we do that test. And basically, the online orders are being directly injected into the restaurant that we have where we do the testing, exactly the way it's being done into an existing restaurants today. So basically, that order at some point, let's say at 10 a.m., it gets injected and then it will be displayed on the screens, and the crew will know it's time for me to work on that order. So that's the way we handle online ordering. Also, we use existing data to develop what we call the script, knowing at what time we want to inject which order type, and what order details each order will have to make sure we have a realistic profile of a restaurant. We don't want to be like making assumptions, like let's assume, I don't know, 75% of the order are online because that will not be true. So again, we're using existing data to develop the profile of the test we want to do and set up the inputs. So I'm just going to repeat myself one more time here. There is a different engine, there is a different tool that is just responsible to inject orders at a very specific time with very specific order details. It is clear. And Ryan, do you think I need to be a little bit more detailed?
No, I think that that's clear. And so you kind of mentioned like the script really creates these different scenarios of like maybe different demand or different orders for the particular test that you're going to run. And then like that script is an input into the Simio model as well. So on the Simio solution, we're creating customers at the same time the tickets would have been printed, in the prior solution. So no,
Yes.
all very clear. All very clear. Thanks, Olivia. Can you speak to some of the configurations that you have within the model? You mentioned like some restaurants don't have the fast forward window. I think this particular question was asking a little bit about like the order makeup and how often orders come in, which I think we just talked about that a little bit, but could maybe you describe to some of maybe more other configurations that you have within the model to like configure maybe the restaurant layout or different functions that the restaurant would have?
Yes, that's a good question. So I'm gonna try to literally go like follow a car, so in my
Hmm.
mind, so I don't forget anything. So configuration that can change. The number of ordering booth you can have. So we use the word single and side by side. So some restaurants just have one ordering booth, some others have two. So that's one of the component we can change um, going through. And then some restaurants do not have a fast forward car, so every single orders have to be served out of the present window. We can also play with the number of parking. So sometimes a car can be asked to get parked, and then someone will walk to get their order. Same here. We can have different number of parking spots. Then that will also impact the flow of the drive-through. So it's an important component. To be also very specific, do they have curbside? It's another one. Almost the number of kiosks. So now when we're in store, the number of kiosks where it's going to have an impact on the number of orders that gets injected into the kitchen. So same here, number of kiosks is something that we can change. Um, and I want to say that's about it regarding the McTaps solution. I'm sure something's going to come
Hmm.
back to my mind, but so far this is definitely like the configuration is really what is important to us, that we want to make sure we can reflect those changes into the model. Anything that will change basically like how fast or how slow orders are going to be injected into the kitchen.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is like the front counter terminals is another one that I don't think you mentioned, which you could expand.
Very true.
And then like the model's a little bit flexible about the data that's coming in. So you mentioned like the McCafe orders are only for some restaurants. So if there are McCafe orders that come in, there's a specific McCafe station, but otherwise it's
Yep.
not
And
utilized. So
And just to make
yeah.
some comments here, I mean, as you can see, Ryan, you know the tool so much. There
Hmm.
is even like some nuances. Some restaurant would
Hmm.
say, yes, we do have McCafe, but the order are being picked up at the main front counter. Like that's even some nuances that we have to make sure like the simulation can reflect exactly the way they are operating, so that ensure the relevance of the conclusion we can make from the test and making sure like this is as realistic as possible. So nuances is really everywhere.
Right, right. Yeah, just kind of like all modeling efforts, we had to make some assumptions to get to a feasible solution here, and that would work for, you know, the 90% of the 95% of the restaurants that are out there. And you know, probably some minor nuances and within like the details there, but yeah, it's a good call out. Good call out. All right. So you mentioned this a little bit at the end of the presentation. I think this question came in prior, but could you actually speak to, you know, how involved the crew was with the change management process? Like how receptive was that to the new solution? Because I think they've been using the McDog system for a while, right? And this was a pretty big change.
Absolutely. So the change management was very fascinating. When we developed the tool, one of the big items we worked on was the user interface, what they see on the app. And we involve some people that are crew members during that design phase to make sure that we were not designing a tool that we thought was like, okay, great, they're going to love it. But then once it get presented, maybe that does not work as well. So from day one, we always had someone that was reviewing the design, reviewing the way we were placing the buttons. Like we even get insights regarding like the color of like when you press that button, does that change the color? Then do you have to press finish? Like we really thought through with them from the very beginning how we were going to design and thought through the layout and the interface of the app. Basically, like what the crew then will be holding in their hands and making sure like it's intuitive. We didn't want them to be reading all the time. What do I do with this button? Where do I get the order details? Like everything has to be very intuitive, because what we've noticed with the crew members, it's a lot of like shoulder to shoulder learning. It's not like they're not going to be sitting for an hour going into the details of like, okay, what do I have to look at? Like one day
Hmm.
someone's going to show them pretty quickly, and then they have to be able to do the test. So keeping that in mind, crew members were involved from the very beginning. Any decision that was about the visuals, do we have to press one more button? And they were very involved. We also did some testing, and the results of the testing was definitely to get the crew insights. Just to be very specific here, when we did the layout of the app for the ordering booth, there was a lot of like button clicking. It was getting very confusing. But when we designed it, we didn't really thought through, or maybe we felt like, oh, that was good. But then actually now when we were on the floor, the crew was placing the order, we even learned even more. Okay, actually, like there's too much pushing buttons. We need to reduce that pushing button. So it has been an ongoing exercise, and we definitely gather the crew feedback from the very beginning. One thing I want to mention, and I don't know if that was not said during the presentation. So they all have an app or a computer where they can see the popping of like the actions they have to take, the order they have to place. Also, there's a very big screen where the Simio model is running. So then we can visualize the people walking around, we can visualize the car going through the drive-through, and it's on a very big screen and everybody can see it. And the crew was also very excited looking at it. Like they all walk through the first time and be like, wow, that's cool. So it really brings, and I think that's one of the beauty of simulation when we can see a very nice visual. It helps so much with the storytelling. So again, even that component really brings excitement to the crew. We were asking them a lot of questions. How do you like it? What would you change? Why you didn't like it and all that stuff. But also like they felt they were very part of like a new effort. And when they saw us coming, they're just like, are we testing your thing today? Which is like, yes, we are. So there was definitely a lot of excitement, which I think was definitely helped with the change management. Not to say we did an amazing work, but they also saw how easy it is to use. It's like one, two button pushes at most. So because it was also very easy for them to like use it, get familiar with it, own it. I think that really helps also with the change management. They were not reluctant to change because it was easy to use the tool. I think it's a very long answer. I'm just going to pause, and I hope I'm answering the question. Ryan, feel free to jump in if you also have different thoughts here.
No, I think you answered it perfectly, honestly. Yeah, I think bringing them along really helped, and then any visuals, right? Like just really help those that aren't involved in simulation on the day-to-day really get bought into those solutions. So I think two great big points there. Cool. I think we have a couple more. So what was some of the biggest difficulties with using Simio as like the real-time simulation tool? And then like, do the users in the kitchen, do they have a pretty big learning curve to adjusting to this new tool? Kind of similar to what we just talked, but
yes. So I love talking about McTaps so much, so I'm so excited about the teaching. So I want to say the biggest difficulty was very are we going to learn anything we have not anticipated? I feel every time we run a script, let's say now this test, we have 50 customers, there are 10% of online orderings, and let's say it's the Chinese market, so we have some of the Chinese menu item. We were kind of like running and thinking like, is there anything we have not anticipated? So I feel the very big difficulty is working with so many different markets that has very unique nuances. Maybe some markets have a very specific order type that we have not thought about. And now Simio doesn't know what to do because I don't know, an order type XYZ has not been set up. So I think the biggest difficulty is really working with so many different markets that have so many different nuances, and in different words is how can we standardize all the inputs that go into Simio? I think that was kind of like, to me, I think that was one of the biggest difficulty. As I said in the presentation, the formatting of all those different tools that feed information into Simio, they have to be very consistent. A string will not work if we say there was a date and time. Like there's so many things that we have to make sure, and we put a bunch of like firewalls, like if that's not the proper formatting, then we change X, Y, and Z. So I think there was a lot of discovery every time we run a script. That was part also of the test. Let's use so many different markets as we can, so we can try to gather everything under the earth that we know about. And also the other big difficulty is, I think when we say three words, when we say database, network, IT, I feel it's already like, oh my God, something's gonna happen. It's
Mhm.
definitely a black box. We've learned like sometimes we look at an error message, we having no idea how we're gonna fix it. So as soon as we talk about like writing information into a database, even more into at McDonald's, that is a very big like it's a big machines and there is a lot of limitations on what we can do with the network and database and writing on database and servers. So I think that was another very big difficulties. Ryan told us from the very beginning the that's going to be the biggest roadblock is to make sure like IT will follow with this. And he was definitely right. Like I think our biggest challenges we had was very from that angle. So um, I think that's kind of answering the first part. And I think for the second part,
Yeah.
we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Learning curve was good from the crew member. And then the franchisee, the people who come to see the tools, again, the excitement is really there when they see the Simio visual. There's a lot of excitement that also help with the trust. I'm just gonna conclude here.
Yeah. And I think I'll just add to the second part of the question. It's pretty straightforward for the crew to use the tool today, right? They have the tablets that's their main interaction point, and they're just prompted what to do. And then on the Simio setup side, it's pretty straightforward for someone even that doesn't know how to use Simio to get the model running with the right script and configuration. So that setup is pretty minimal for the crew there.
And I feel we're getting a time, and that's the moment I should stop talking. But just one more comment. I
Sure,
think you
sure.
made a very good point, Ryan, is we also designed the tool from the app, but also from senior side to make sure that we don't want to have just like a senior user like me running the test. We really want to give autonomy to the people on the floor doing the test every single day so they can run it on their own. So the way we also set up the simulation was we found a way to just make sure they can just have the script ID they want to run and just click the green button. So making sure they can have access to only the area that they need to change anything. We talked about changing the configuration they can do it themselves. So there's also like this aspect that we thought through. How can we design like an entire tool, not just the app, but also from a senior side to really give autonomy to all those people running tests every single day, all day long.
Hmm. No, that's a great insight. Thank you, Olivia. I think we have time for just one more here. I know we're getting real close. And okay, so how does the solution compare to a typical Simio digital twin? And I think I'll take that one here for us. This solution actually is pretty close to what we would call like a digital twin. It's purely data driven, as we kind of described, to where the data coming in will completely influence the entire behavior of the model, and the entire outcome of the script that they would run in reality. So for me, that's kind of one of the core definitions, is that it's purely data driven, and we can execute these runs in real time. And the model is completely configurable by new data coming in and the new script coming in. So there is some with this particular model, and the way we leaned on the development from before. Some of the development isn't like what I would say like a traditional digital twin scheduling solution. Some of the details that we would have in like a scheduling solution aren't necessarily there. For example, like some of like your work in progress, or things of that nature. But it's really close, especially on the operational detail, and how much is covered there. So, but thank you, Olivia. That's all the time we have for the questions here today. Excellent presentation, and really appreciate you sharing like this unique, Simio application with the crew here today.
Awesome. Very delighted to be invited to present. So very enjoyed. Thank you.